So there's a new development ahead of Donald Trump's civil trial for defamation against E. Jean Carroll. A lawyer for Carroll now wants the judge in the case to prevent Trump from turning the trial into a circus. According to the Washington Post, quote, Carroll's attorney on Friday asked a federal judge to give Trump strict warnings about what grounds he must avoid if he chooses to testify at a trial next week to determine what damages, if any, are owed for defamation claims. The letter to Judge Kaplan seeking firm restrictions cited Trump's hijacking of summations on Thursday in another lawsuit, a $370 million civil case brought by the New York Attorney General. Trump is set to attend the first day of the trial on Tuesday. Now, you'll remember a jury already found Trump liable for sexual abuse and defamation against Carroll last year. Back with us is our man, conservative attorney George Conway. He's the man. So, George, I think this moment right now for Trump, again, is crystallizing in a way in which, yeah, the judges around all these cases are going, you know what, we got to start clamping down here.
Yeah.
How do you think that actually plays out?
Oh, I mean, what the judge did here was he's basically saying you can't fool around. I mean, the problem he has in this case is, for procedural reasons, there were two separate cases. One was the case that tried the defamation he engaged in against E. Jean Carroll after he was president. This is the first case that was brought that got held up because he claimed that the federal law prevented the lawsuit, and then he later claimed that he was immune from it because he was president. And the first trial, where he had the opportunity to testify but did not, was where Jean Carroll presented her story and the story of the women who she told just like within a day or two after the rape. And then, the jury found, and Trump refused to show up to rebut that she was raped that day. And so he's precluded. There's a doctrine called collateral estoppel in the law that if you lose an issue once to a party, we can't
bring it up
litigate
again.
it. And so basically, Jean Carroll's lawyers are saying they made a motion to exclude all sorts of things that he might do to try to relitigate it, and also to make sure that Trump doesn't pull the kind of crap that he pulled the other day in court across the street.
The New Republic has reporting that speaks just to that. And so they write that Kaplan issued an order Tuesday barring Trump and his lawyers from discussing Carroll's choice of lawyer or who might be paying her legal fees. Yes. They can't make comments concerning her past romantic relationships, sexual disposition, and he can't claim that he didn't sexually abuse her.
Right.
But there's something that they can claim. Yes. Apparently. Look, Alicia has it circled here in these notes. They could talk about you, George Conway.
Yes.
You were entered into evidence.
It says, this does not foreclose Mr. Trump from eliciting testimony that the idea of suing Mr. Trump crystallized in Ms. Carroll's mind as a result of a conversation at a party with George Conway.
That would be you.
That's me, a Republican lawyer. Actually, I was no longer a member of the Republican Party by that point, who, quote, does not like Mr. Trump, close quote. I think I don't like his criminality. It's not personal. And that Mr. Conway then introduced her to a lawyer, which I did, the inestimably amazing Robbie Kaplan, who won the case for her and will win it again.
So the argument that he's trying to make in that footnote, beyond he doesn't like me, is that this is somehow politically motivated, which is not what is being litigated here.
No.
The question is, no, he lost.
Right.
We are now talking
damages.
Just about damages. And it is so striking to me that in all these efforts to hold Donald Trump accountable, the individual who's been most successful is a septuagenarian who is coming at this at great personal cost, great personal pain. And she and her attorney, Robbie Kaplan, have been the most successful. It ties to me to an exchange that our colleague Lisa Rubin flagged for us that happened on Friday in the civil fraud trial, which is you had the judge sort of ask this last-minute question, which was, well, how would you compare what Donald Trump did to what Bernie Madoff did? And the prosecutor said a number of things. There were less people who were impacted, but we're talking about a highly regulated industry. And in both of these civil cases, I think what you're hearing the judges work through is a little bit of norm setting, of saying whatever we do in this case applies to other real estate folks. Whatever we do in this E. Jean Carroll case applies to other survivors. And so from that vantage point, forget about just accountability for Donald Trump himself. You were talking about setting a justice standard for anyone who is seeking
Yeah,
justice.
and that's absolutely, I mean, that's the tension. That's the reason why you see this tension. And it's gone back decades, really, and it certainly went back to his presidency between Donald Trump and the law and the rules. Donald Trump doesn't think rules and laws apply to him. Our court system begs to differ. And that's why we're seeing this essentially this titanic multiple venue clash between Donald Trump and the rule of law. And it really, you know, I mean, I like to make fun of Trump for his silliness. I mean, this is all about, you know, he had his lawyers keep talking about me at the first trial because it was his obsession, and his lawyers end up reflecting his obsessions. And he thinks everything is about him and about how he's persecuted. But the fact of the matter is, I mean, that's funny, but it's a very serious thing about why he should never become president again. He wants to destroy the legal system. He wants to destroy the rule of law because he doesn't like it, and he doesn't want it to apply to him. He only wants it to apply to people he can seek vengeance against. And he even talks about that.
Yes, he does. George Conway, you're better than a cup of coffee on a Saturday morning, baby.
Well, I got to go back to sleep. I got an appointment with my phone.